All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to DMI's web conversation, Building an Internal Innovation Capability in a Financial Services Provider, featuring John Campbell from Continuum and Dr. Munib Karavjic, I said it easier before, from AMP Australia. Last September, Continuum and AMP Services Australia were honored with a DMI Design Value Award for their work using human-centered design to help enable the financial services leader to access and leverage customer-centric ideas and build a successful internal implementation capability. We're delighted John and Munib are with us today to share their inspiring story and the methods they've created. And I'd like to thank our many listeners around the globe for finding us in today's new time slot. We've often had international listeners join us in their overnight hours, so we're happy to find a time that allows them, and Munib especially, to see daylight and have their coffee first. To begin, I'd like to introduce our esteemed guests. John Campbell is a VP at the Global Innovation Design Consultancy Continuum, where he helps organizations become customer-centered and develop their internal capability for repeatedly creating, launching, and scaling new offerings and compelling customer experiences. Prior to Continuum, John honed his expertise at Harley-Davidson Motor Company and the ad agency Kramer Krauselt. John holds a Master of Design Methods degree from Chicago's Institute of Design and a BA in Journalism from the University of Wisconsin. Dr. Munib Karavjic is the Director of Design and Innovation at AMP Financial Services, Australia's #1 retirement savings, life insurance, and financial advice corporation. He is the founder of AMP's Innovation Center and MVO's Incubator, which introduces new ways of working and delivering offerings to the market that are underpinned by human-centered design as a key engine for organic growth. Munib published one of the first books about e-commerce and is also a conjoint professor in creativity and innovation at UNSW Business School, where he teaches innovation in the Master of Marketing and MBA programs. He holds a PhD in marketing and focused his doctoral work on innovation in e-commerce. My name is Pamela DeCesar. I'm a member of the Board of Directors of DMI, and I'm very happy to host today's web conversation. Our talk will fill this hour, and we'd love it if you join us by typing your questions into the questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel. As always, we hope to get to all the great questions you have that enable you to join in on this conversation. Should you miss anything, you can find a recording of this session later this week at dmi.org/webconversations. So let's begin. Welcome, John, and welcome, Munib. I'm glad you're here.
Good morning from sunny Sydney.
Great. Well, I'd like to kick us off by asking a context question. I think we can all agree that creating a sustainable growth engine is sort of like finding the Holy Grail, and you've achieved this. So before you tell us how you've done so, can you please talk a little about the problem you originally defined and the relationship that you've developed in order to reach your goals?
Yeah, so look, probably the best way to start is that just give your audience the picture about AMP, and then have a better understanding the magnitude of the change that we are trying to make here. So AMP is 168 years old organization here in Australia, and it is an Australian icon which did a lot of things in these 168 years, and in terms of innovation and helping Australia in general to grow. So recently we realized that insurance, overall life insurance, overall is incredibly complex area for people to understand. And we, given that we are the leaders in insurance, we felt that we should start actually helping our customers to have a much better understanding of life insurance and what is the meaning in their lives about that insurance. So we realized that one of the way to actually focus on that is to employ human-centered design as a method in our organization to understand customers, and we spend a lot of time in-home discussions with them to understand the challenge that they are having when they're dealing with insurance. We engaged Continuum 2.5 years ago on this journey, and Continuum helped us actually to establish that thinking, start establishing these capabilities that we can engage the entire organization around that goal. And then what we found as a surprise is that then suddenly the organization picked it up, and then we started building this in other areas like banking, like advice and things like that. So we really found that now HC, the human-centered design, became the kind of key driver for our customer-centric strategy and key driver to come with new initiatives to achieve this sustainable growth.
Thank you. Thanks. Great intro.
And this is John from not so sunny, well, it's kind of sunny Boston the day before. One of the benefits of working with Munib in Australia is he's always a day in the future, which helps with innovations.
It gives you a nice perspective, right?
That's right. It helps. It helps. So as Munib said, AMP and Continuum have been on a journey to develop an innovation capability that helps drive, repeatable and consistent customer experiences and get new offers out to market. And this is very important from our standpoint because, when we look across geography, when we look across industries, the most common challenge that large established organizations have is the ability to implement new offers, to get new ideas through the layers, the processes, the committees, the people, and be able to maintain the intent as those ideas get out to market as a prototype, a pilot, and ultimately to scale. So we spent a lot of time looking at both academic literature, discussing concept implementation with a number of organizations both in Australia and in the US, and then applied our experience within AMP. And so between Munib and I, what we're hoping to do today is share with you this model that we've developed. As opposed to a straightforward case study, the intent of this presentation is to share with you what worked for us. Many of these things may seem familiar as discrete elements or tactics, but this combination of how to work, how you bring teams together, and how you move ideas through the organization is one that we found very effective in a complex industry. Insurance, banking, financial services is highly regulated and requires a lot of movement through different departments. So ultimately, by the end of this session, we hope that we've provided some practical steps to affect change within complex organizations and industries as you try to move design and customer centricity into a company. So with that, we are off and running. As Pam said, she's happy to moderate any questions, and she'll jump in and stop us if there's something that we can add to or clarify. So, the point in time we're living in is actually quite exciting. I think for anyone that's in this call, they live this and experience this acutely. Really, this is some of the most exciting times for consumers, unless you're in an established company. An established company is dealing with a lot of challenges. There's incredibly high customer expectations. There's the democratization of information and the transparency that comes with that for consumers. There's new entrants, there's startups, there's companies entering adjacent industries. There's a speed of a globalized world. And what all this means is that organizations need to figure out how to adapt and respond quickly to stay relevant in today's marketplace. And this is really true across industries. So we've spoken about financial services. This is true in healthcare and hospitality, even in the tax industry, right? With Uber. And this pressure to adapt, this pressure to respond and to effectively find ways to innovate has generated a lot of activity for organizations. So here's just a handful of the ways that big companies are trying to address this. And if you look just at financial services, there's wonderful examples of the activity. Big companies like Visa and MasterCard and Citi have built innovation labs. You have startups like Betterment, Wealthfront, and LearnVest competing in the financial advice space. BBVA acquired Simple Bank, and most recently the UX consultancy Spring. Capital One acquired Adaptive Path. Barclays Bank partners with Techstars, the accelerator. There's new entrants like Stripe and Square in the payment side, obviously Apple Pay and your fingerprint. So what does that mean if you're an entrenched financial corporation? What's the approach you take? How do you handle that? These are many of the ways that this is being tackled. But each of these has one common theme across them. That common theme is that they're all incredibly focused on the development or acquisition of idea-generating resources, accelerators, acquisition of startups, crowdsourcing and the like. But very often, a focus on idea generation confuses action or activity with outcomes. That is, the actual outcome of impacting the customer, driving profitability, getting offers and experiences to market consistently, and ultimately to scale. So in working together, Munib and I landed on this quote. We paraphrase from Roy Amari's law, and that is that established companies underestimate their ability to create new ideas, and they vastly overestimate their ability to implement new ideas. Which makes sense, right? I mean, companies exist to implement. They are very good at that. The problem is that when it comes to new ideas, uncertain ideas, the first of something, they're incredibly inefficient and ineffective at that. And that's because the worthwhile ideas, the ones that can change a business, that can delight customers, are seen as highly risky. And in a way, they are. This is a model that we call the scary zone. And the scary zone is a space just past incremental change and just shy of what we call cold fusion. Incremental change is, now with lemon scent, now with a chocolate flavor, maybe a half point off with a mortgage and a concierge phone call at a bank. It's something that still works within the optimized, efficient engine that is business as usual. And cold fusion, that's that far out innovation. It's too expensive to do now. The technology doesn't exist. It's out there and looks like innovation, but it can't be implemented for things that are beyond the business's control. And there's a certain level of comfort with cold fusion as well. And that's because what you're able to say is, well, we did innovation. We identified a solution. It's not our fault that it's too expensive or too technically infeasible to implement. The scary zone, though, that's where the real value lies. And that's what we're trying to solve for in this implementation dilemma model.
So, as you understand from John, scary zone ideas don't play well with the structure and silos. I'm pretty sure there are many reasons why is that, but John and I believe there are four main reasons for that. Number one is that a lot of companies are focusing on a wrong problem. So, and mainly because they are looking inside out and resolving the business problem, not actually spending enough time to understand the customer challenge and customer problem they're dealing with. The second one is, this is a very expensive approach because we believe that we jump straight from the idea into the implementation or scale, and then very often we realize that scale is not giving results that we expected. The third one, or these organizational constraints, well, it is very well known that organizations are very strong engines, and they are working on optimization, and optimization and efficiency, and working on that actually doesn't allow enough space for flexibility and then some creativity. And the final one, a measure for success. So the focus is on internal success metrics instead of customer values. So we are not saying that we shouldn't focus on internal metrics, but in the same time, we're also saying that we need to find a way how to measure the value that we are creating for customers. And this is where we come with the implementation dilemma. So the main thing is here is we have a kind of two ways. One is that we are using the current approach when we get ideas of what we have been doing for many years, or do we actually develop new way of implementing ideas? This is very similar to what actually General Electric introduced as a mode 1 and mode 2, and what they believe is that it should be a combination of mode 2 or mode 1 and mode 2. So, and we will cover in more details later on. So but before we start doing that, I just want to remind you how we see this, and when we studied companies here in Australia and the US, how traditional optimized implementation approach works. So, and you probably are familiar with that too. So we usually start with the strat planning and start driving initiatives. We build the case, establish a team, and begin building this for scale from the outset. Well, midway through, we realized that there are some unanswered questions, and very often these questions are in relation to some customer experience or some important element of the features of the product or service. So very often, and we start actually assessing the risk at that point and saying, oh, well, are we going actually to deliver this on time and budget, and then without actually going back into trying to understand in more details. So, and we usually push this hard, and then we focus on delivering stuff on time and on budget. But when we deliver stuff, we don't think that we moved the dial, and we don't think that we created value for customers. So this is what we call nice landing, wrong airport. We executed well, but we're not sure if we're creating value for customers. Mm-hmm. So to avoid nice landing, wrong airport situation, we have found that it is important that you actually start first with understanding the problem. Then, what's the problem for customers that we want to resolve? And then we do risk assessment, is saying, are we actually focusing on right problem? But we do that assessment by building this customer case where we understand the customer and then their desirability to actually take this value for them. So then, based on that, we go through the motion of developing new ideas, then started prototyping, placing smaller bets, and until we got a conviction that this is something that will create value for people, we will not start building business case nor determine will we scale this business or not. So, and this is what actually give us a lot of certainty that when we build a business case, we will actually build this on some known facts and experience through the prototypes or minimum viable offers or minimum viable products that we are testing in the market. So what we believe the implementation solution would be that the organization should focus on building new ideas through building innovation capabilities and innovation ecosystem. So, and we call this the implementation model. But the good thing about it is that established companies don't need to be enemies of innovation, which means that doesn't require that we need to make a massive change in terms of people and how we operate. It requires repositioning the existing capabilities and strengthen them in more efficient and effective way. So the implementation model that you can see on the slide has two kind of broad components. One is what we call that an implementation pod, and the other is implementation enablers. So John and I will, as John mentioned, what you will see here, it's nothing new in terms of the individual element of this implementation model, but when we unpack this, it is important to understand how it is applied into entire innovation capabilities development. So we will unpack these elements for you, and we will give you example how we are doing that at AMP.
Great. That sounds great.
So with the starting to focus on the three core elements of an implementation pod. So these are empowered team, physical space, and a shared approach and tools. And what this model really allows is better collaboration within the organization, the ability to coordinate new initiatives, to drive a less expensive and therefore less risky approach, and increase speed to market. So get new offers to market quickly so that you can learn and then iterate and scale. The first key element is an empowered team. So this empowered team is a full-time dedicated cross-functional team, typically of 5 to 7 people. We found that that size is most effective. And they're co-led by a design lead and a business lead. And these design leads and business leads report out to an offer owner who's within 2 levels of the C-suite. What this enables is that team to gel, to work together cohesively on one specific innovation initiative. And as part of this team, they do not have to get sign-off on requirements back to their functional leadership. So the design lead, the business lead, and their team members are empowered in a truly empowered way to make decisions on what needs to happen to build this concept from a customer-facing standpoint, reporting only in for the period of this initiative to the offer owner.
John,
oh, sorry.
Who designates these individuals?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we talk a lot about availability is not a competence. These need to be senior and seasoned people with a good mix of both hard and soft skills. So depending on the initiative, you want to bring the right people from the right departments in. So for example, for a life insurance product, you want not just marketing and IT, you also want actuary and pricing, underwriting, and the like. And what that allows is an agile team to sit together and to come up with the right concept, to test it with consumers before launching it without slowing down by going back to, quote, homeroom, back to their original departments.
So when you began this process at AMP, did you lay out this entire method initially, or was this sort of an organic way that you now look back and say this is what we did?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. So we started actually with the core and extended team ideas, which was part of the Continuum model of building innovation capabilities. But as we progressed, it was quite new for us. And then as we progressed, we sharpened this. We learned where was the tension. So especially when you have a core team, and usually in corporations say, well, you can't have a business lead and design lead, people making decisions together. But we're deliberately saying that we need to have somebody who will actually push hard on customer experience interest, who will push hard on nice design, and then kind of common sense design that looks good for customers and delight customers. So, and also this sign of what John was mentioning created tension, but we realized that it is important that we start actually giving people methods and tools they can understand each other, which I will talk about that later on.
Okay, and one question from one of our listeners before we go on, because it fits right here, and I think it's a great question. How do you justify carving out these early resources without a business case to a reluctant leadership?
Well, it's a fantastic question. So, and as you can imagine, especially financial institutions, because they are risk-averse institutions, they are really focusing heavily on the business case. What we did in our case was we asked seed funding until we got to the point, as I mentioned earlier, that we have enough conviction that this idea is reasonable, and then we'll have a viability and feasibility which will help the organization to build this in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, I think it's critical to have a well-framed problem, a business challenge that leadership finds is important and critical to solve. That goes back to kind of the ambition of a scary zone idea. And then through the seed funding, develop enough of a customer case on what the problem can or the solution can be, that before you start to apply additional resources, you have enough of a hypothesis to go with higher level of confidence to ask for additional funding.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
And then here you can see our implementation space with the core and extended team members of the pod representing 9 disciplines, discussing offer details and customer journeys and things like that. So this is the kind of the team that we empower to make decisions and to move this project forward.
And another question, sorry, I don't want to slow us down, but there's some good questions coming in. How do you prevent them from being seen as an elitist group of innovators within their organization? Is there pushback from the other staff?
That's such a good question. So we're very cognizant of not wanting to create a cool kids club. I think there's a lot of organizations find that developing a dedicated space is important, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think having glass walls and Eames chairs and people walking around looking like they only have to worry about the future and not how to make money today, I think is very counterproductive to implementation. And so by creating cross-functional teams where you're pulling people from the business to work with designers as opposed to designers off on their own, helps drive that adoption and that implementation, and also starts to affect culture change in a positive way.
And at the beginning, it was seen like a lot of exclusive teams and things like that, and we learned from that, and that's why you will hear later. We actually took some actions to resolve this kind of tension between core and extended team and the rest of the organization.
Great.
So the second key element on the pods are physical space, and for a lot of the people that are on the phone, the notion of physical space as being important is self-evident. As designers, as design managers, we know that space makes a real difference. But I think what a lot of organizations say is, let's work virtually, let's work spread out, let's work asynchronously. And we found that that's very hard for affecting change, both on the team and the organizational level. This model we came across from a firm called DEGW that we think is nice and a simple representation of the difference between asking people to work differently and using physical space to affect change. We've found the same thing this model shows, that if you surround people with a new way of working, where they're working physically, where they're working and thinking out loud and building off each other, showing the progress that's tangibly displayed on the walls, and bringing people in to socialize and engage them on identifying the right solutions, this makes a tremendous difference in the way that the work happens.
And indeed, well, it was very interesting actually how the behavior and team dynamics changed with the space. So on this slide you can see people from different businesses sitting together, and there is no PowerPoint slides. It's actually all artifacts, and the stages and progress update is on whiteboards. And then steering committees will come and have a stand-up meeting instead of a board meeting sitting in the boardroom, and then have a kind of a regular update using PowerPoint slides. We're now using actually whiteboards, and steering committee members will walk through the whiteboard and have a good understanding what's the progress of the project.
That's great.
The other thing that's important is that technology does not make an innovation space. There is a lot of focus around whiteboarding, around pinup space, around collaborative and mobile furniture, without the need for lasers and fog machines and all kinds of other high-tech stuff. It's really about thinking out loud and building off each other versus needing a lot of fancy tech. The third and final element for a pod is a common approach and set of tools. So if you look across the top there, frame, understand, ideate, prototype, and scale. That's a high-level 5-step process. That process, though, requires clear understanding of the phases, the end-of-phase reviews, and the templates that need to be designed to offer teams some guidance in getting to the funding for the next phase. Critically, the other point is to avoid any sort of transition or handoff between the front-end design-led core team and the back-end business-led extended team. And this gets a bit to the question that someone asked around the role of handing off and making sure that it's not a cool kids club. So if you see the design lead and the business lead in the center there, and the core team that works with them pulled from the business, there is no trading out from designers to business people over the course of the phase. It's more a sense of who's driving ownership over the course of the phases. So no one disappears, rather it's just a level of emphasis, and that does a couple of things. One, it makes sure that the business is equally represented and mitigates any conflict and cultural issues. It ensures that the maintenance of the idea or the intent of the idea is maintained as well. So if you think of the game of telephone, when we were children, a teacher whispers a sentence and the kids each whisper to the one next to them, and the idea comes out radically different. The phrase comes out radically different from beginning to end. Well, that happens in organizations as well as it moves from product to marketing to sales to training to IT and digital and the like. And so by having this common approach with a core team that's dedicated throughout, you make sure that the customer value is maintained as it gets to market. Any questions on that?
Not specific to that, so I want to.
Yep. So as John explained, these 3 elements of the implementation pod are critically important to work together. So we establish the core and empower core teams. We provide them and collocate them into physical space, and then we also given them the approach that they actually have a common language and common understanding. So, and then when you structure that for the core and extended team, works well. But we want actually to, as mentioned earlier, as you Pamela asked question, so how you actually resolve that tension, and we realize that the rest of the organization needs to be on the same page as the core and extended team, and that's why we found actually that these 3 elements: training, new risk appetite, and then radical transparency are key enablers of the implementation model. So talking about training, so as mentioned, the requirement to have a common understanding of the approach and how we deliver things was essential. And in order to do that, we created what we call that Human-Centered Design Practitioner Program in cooperation with Luma Institute. And just for your audience, Luma Institute is an innovation catalyst, highly specialized in helping people to understand the impact of innovation and human-centered design on their organization and on their customers. So we tailored this program, and then start engaging people in this program to understand how they can leverage human-centered design methods and tools in their daily activities, not just on the projects they are working. And the 90-day program has 2.5 days workshop, 30-day check-in, how they're actually developing and building their personal plans, applying human-centered design. So we trained around 400 people to date, and we have all our leadership went through this training, including CEO, and we assigned to them peer coaches. And for example, our CEO has a peer coach, which is one of my designers, and they all involved in developing their personal plans and then applying human-centered design. So,
are these is the core team, this is one of the questions that's come in, is the core team that you were talking about, are they exclusive to the innovation project, or are they shared? So I know you're talking about 400 people that you've trained over time. It sounds like it started with a team and then grew broader.
So yeah, so let me clarify this. So core team is dedicated to the core team member is dedicated to the project, but you have people who are an extended team who are dialing in or out based on the requirements of the project. But then you have an entire organization which, in some point of time, need to be involved in implementing these ideas. So when we say common language, where, for example, we might say we need to start with framing the problem. And then everybody would say, oh, yeah, we understand that. We will need to, which is very good, actually, to start framing the problem. But people don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. And then, or if they know, they might do that in a different way. Well, what we are saying with this approach that we have and with this practitioner program, we are saying everybody in the organization, when we say, let's frame the problem, regardless if you work on project or not, you frame the problem using these methods and tools. And then this is how we engage people in having common language and then having common understanding what is required.
Mm-hmm.
We think a lot about it as you know, design and innovation processes as the level of fluency you have with a language. So we're shared that as a metaphor where, you know, some people need to be able to speak business level French and others just need to be able to order a beer. And there's various levels in between. And so a core team needs to be able to develop a full solution. But as the organization comes in to help evolve it and scale it, you need people that are familiar with the language and to be able to converse with that core team. Skills can vary, but the organization as a whole needs to be able to know what good is and to be able to define that in common language across the group.
Great.
So if you don't have questions, we continue rolling.
No, please, yes. Well, I do, but I'd like you to keep going.
Yeah. So so the second enabler is a new risk tolerance or new risk appetite. So and we think there are four key elements of that. One is especially it is important to understand if we want to build this, how we call it smaller bets to the organization, which to the market, which is quite different what organizations doing now, most of the organizations. So it is important to outline this leadership risk tolerance, so that people understand what are the boundaries, and instead of actually checking is this risk for us or not, we give people parameters saying these are the boundaries that you work around, and then whatever you come and with your experiment, with your prototype, it must be between these two things. Like, you know, if you look at this in financial services, well, number one, it must be compliant, and nobody questioned that. So whatever you try to test or prototype, compliance is number one priority. And then, for example, you might say what we have here, you need to have exit plan. So if it doesn't work, what is your plan B for change that or enhance that and things like that. So the second component of this new risk appetite is what we call the place small bets with market tests. So which means that, you know, as soon as we have a conviction that the concept has a kind of creates value for people, and then prototype them and test them with the customers, we try to then put this as a smaller bet in the form of minimum viable offer to see what's the real reaction on the market. Because in testing environment, people acting in one way, but when you go to market environment, then people reacting in a little bit different way. So the third one is high fidelity front end and a low fidelity back end. So the institutions like financial services, well, they are very well established institutions. They have an established customer base, and they don't want to risk with experimenting or create something that their customers will not like or will create some bad image about it. So that's why it's important to have this high fidelity front end when we are interacting with customers, when we're testing. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we should have a high fidelity back end, because we can actually have some small database which will help us to manage the system and test these ideas while we go live in the market. An example of that would be that, you know, when we're testing some of the concepts in insurance, we instead of building the system, we established a small call center unit, and which was responding to people and then fulfilling elements manually instead of actually just putting that on the system. And the reason why we put it in to do that manually is to figure out, is this actually what really people want, and is this how people want to interact. And the final one, final part of new risk appetite is how we measure the success. And then we would like to say that the critical part is measure a return on learnings. And then every stage we introduce this concept or prototype or minimum viable offer, we learn how people react to it. And it is important to constantly enhance this in the way that we believe that we will finally find the way that people really appreciate that value that we're delivering. And the last enabler is what we call that radical transparency. And on the next slide, you will see the different way how we engage our people. So in the past, you know, we usually have a small R&D department contained in one room, and then just trying to figure out what's the new approach that organization is doing. Instead of that, we said we need to be very transparent what we are doing. In every phase of the process, we actually go back to the organization and organize what we call the brown bag lunches or some sessions or some webinars and things like that. So what is important that for this transparency, we come to the point that more people we engage in this, better outcomes and better understanding we will get. And that's just, you know, one of the rules that we introduce in this process is that our senior leaders should come to in-home visits when we did interviews with our customers. And it was kind of very important experience for them to hear firsthand from people that they're using our products and services. And it was really great experience for them, and they appreciated that, and they start actually broadening this message and disseminating this message to the rest of the organization, how important it is to listen customers what they want to say to us. So overall, we believe in the last 2.5 years since we started this journey, we transformed the organization in the way how we act and how we think. So with this, building these capabilities and demonstrating in the real sense how actually human-centered design can generate benefits and values for the organization. And then also to the point that we engage people and train them in this practitioner program to help them to shift the mindset in the way that they're focusing and looking for customers in the center of their attention. So far we build a lot of minimum viable offers. We have 4 minimum viable offers live, and then also we do we participate in insurance transformation, and this year we will launch few initiatives to market as a result of our work in human-centered design and innovation.
Thank you. Munib, I have a question, because you just mentioned you had one of the senior managers come to some research, and someone is asking about how do you handle the involvement of people in higher management positions who may not have been through this process before, or a process similar to that?
Look, it's not just senior manager. Our CEO and his direct reports went with our designers and Continuum together to people homes and listened them. So we didn't introduce them as a senior leaders of the organization. They were part of the interviewing crew. So no
suits allowed, right, Munib?
Sorry?
They weren't allowed to wear suits.
No, that's right. They have to go a bit casual and have jeans and things like that, which was great. And then they spent some time. They didn't ask questions. They could ask questions, but they couldn't make comments. But I think it was very important for a leadership to demonstrate they are interested to hear from customers, and then the rest of the organization will follow. And it is important. We had a discussion with our CEO, and he was very keen to join us in this discussion. He found it as a great idea, and he joined us in several occasions. And all his direct reports, they came in different groups, and then the rest of the organization followed.
That's fantastic. That's
so just
yeah.
Oh, just to end the last two slides. The point here is that you're not just getting big, scary ideas through an organization and out to market, but they're starting to affect the culture and the organization more broadly. So when you think about running multiple pods at a time with core teams, each with people from across the business that have rotated in, and you start to do that at scale while supplementing it with training for the broader organization, you start to have this ripple effect. So now as people join a team, work on customer insights, understand the process and the value of human-centered design, help get ideas to market, and then rotate back to their original functional groups, they're now able to represent the process, the value to their colleagues in a way that Munib, who's got a vested interest and is biased as design and innovation lead, or Continuum, biased as a consultancy, simply can't do. So now an actuary is talking to his colleagues about the value of this approach for new innovation. People are equipped with the training, and over time you start to affect the culture in a very meaningful and sticky way. And that ultimately leads to new solutions out to market.
Yeah, as mentioned, these kind of results, and we got a new concept for life insurance, which is in testing mode. We had some new initiatives for our banking and so on. So we in 2014 we were part of the insurance transformation, which in 2014 increased the profitability of 193%. This is the part. You see, it's not just these initiatives; it's broader than that. And then these initiatives actually help to shift the mindset and the urgency and focusing on customers. And on top of that, we are building new concepts as well.
That's fantastic. I have some questions I'd love to be able to ask from our listeners because they're relevant to this point. When you're implementing the model,
yes, we'll end the presentation there. So.
Okay. When you're going through the culture change process, did you get much pushback from people internally? What were some of the biggest barriers, and how did you overcome them?
I think the biggest barrier was that people haven't been informed and didn't understand as I mentioned, the language and what we want to achieve. As soon as we started actually becoming transparent and start engaging people into this, it became apparent that people say, but the main feedback after these brown bag lunches, sessions that we had with people and things like that, the main feedback was, oh, now I understand what do we mean by customer-centric strategy, because we're going and talking to people, synthesizing what they are telling us and try to actually figure out what's the best way that we can deliver the solution for them. That's number one. Number two, yes, people, and then when we started actually forming these core and extended teams, again, as we mentioned earlier, people realized that there might be some exclusive club or some people exclusivity of people who work, but we are not that league and things like that. And when we realized that it is important that we talk the same language and they're using same methods and tools, when we say prototype, everybody in the organization should understand what prototype is. And then we started building this practitioner program, we started engaging people, and then suddenly it was kind of mutual understanding and excitement that, oh, we can contribute to these people, we can be part of it. And it is important to say, when we go to this training, usually trainings are like, oh, this is an example from Apple, this is an example from Google, and things like that. But in our program, this Human-Centered Design Practitioner program, we had a lot of AMP examples, and we are saying, hey, this is how we build a prototype. This is minimum viable offer. This is live in the market. This is how we tested these things with customers. This is the storyboard and customer experience journey, and people start actually associating with that. At the end of that program, the 2.5 days, we actually bring them in our innovation center and implementation center, where they can see the prototypes, real prototypes that we have done. And this is what makes really real things. And then suddenly people are saying, even people who were kind of doubters and the cynics, they would say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how good is that. So just for your information, like in this Human-Centered Design Practitioner program, when they finish this, the advocacy rate is 89%, which means that 89% people will recommend this program to others. And then it creates excitement across the organization. And we have all the courses and programs filled in till April this year, which means we do that three times a month, and then it's already filled in till April, and there is a waiting list for that.
Wow. What's the time frame on this project? Like, how long did it take to define the parameters, sell it in, get the support, and start doing it and get results?
I think it is very hard to have a kind of definite answer on that. So I think we learn a lot through the process, and perhaps we could do faster if we knew all of these elements that we were just talking about. And it sometimes looks slow, but we believe that we need to slow down in order to speed up, so to understand the things. And then it came organically because we understood that people didn't understand each other. There was the tension, and we said, well, we need to resolve this. And then we started actually finding solutions through that. And so for AMP, at the moment, it's like 2.5 years in doing these things. But I don't know. Could we do them faster? I don't know. So it really depends on the individual organization and their internal culture and how much support they have from leaders. I must say we're very lucky that we have a very, very supportive leadership. And they're all very active in these activities that we have been doing. And we are very pleased to see that. And without their significant support and visible support, the process would be much, much slower.
Definitely.
I think too that it depends on the cadence that the organization supports. So, to go from a core team with a concept to getting something in pilot mode took 4 months for one concept, but could suddenly speed up once you were starting to do derivatives of that concept. When you're starting from zero, going all the way to hundreds of people trained and the like, or thousands in some cases, that's really as fast as the individual organization can handle it.
We have a question about qualitative versus quantitative data. So how does the data collected, how do the two compare in the data that you've collected? And is there any concern about sample size while you're doing one-on-one interviews?
Yeah.
So, John, do you want to take it?
Well, I was just going to go back to this slide visually, and just in a brief overview, and then Munib, you can go in more in depth. We really look at the process that AMP built as going from qualitative to quantitative, left to right. So as you're starting to understand deeply about customers, understand their lives and contextually what they're trying to do, not just functional problems, but their values and aspirations, that helps provide inspiration for potential solutions. As you move from left to right and you're starting to prototype and pilot, then you're getting more inputs from the marketplace. You're getting minimal viable products out, and you're getting real data that you can then put into your business model to tighten assumptions and increase your confidence level, so that when you're ready to scale, leaders have better data than if you had just built a business plan in the abstract in Excel, prior to knowing what the concept might be.
Right.
And I would just add to this, if you look at on this slide on frame, In the framing phase, this is where you use everything you have. It can be qualitative, quantitative, whatever, to define the problem. And then you have some level of conviction that you're defining problem based on any sort of information that you get. And the next step would be, well, you need to actually go and validate this problem with the people, with customers, and then you apply this human-centered design, like using these extreme users and things like that, and you go to validate this. And then, as John explained, at the end you go and validate the entire concept. Is it working using quant as well? So there is no kind of clear cut saying, oh, we're using quant or qual. It is kind of mixed on the journey. You're dialing in up and down the involvement of these kind of categories in the process.
Thank you. Just a few more questions. There's so many coming in. I'm trying to tie them together. How do you walk the line between testing with users and the legal disclosures? Because, of course, working for a financial organization, I'm sure that your hands are sometimes tied with that. And how do you reward your users when you do the testing?
So, you see, that's the kind of thing, like, if you look at traditional way, you're saying, okay, we design a concept and we want to test this with people, and then we send to legal department and saying, oh, can you actually see if it's okay or not? Right. And then usually this transactional kind of interaction end up in being negative, because legal guys will say, well, no, it's not, or there are many missing parts in this. But what we did instead, we actually have a legal person working and collaborating with the core team. From right at the beginning, when we realized that we have some decent concept, we said, okay, now we need to have a legal people, marketing people, digital people, so and as a part of the core team. And this is how you're actually starting to collaborate. And then it's not about we are going to ask legal to approve this or sign off. We are having legal people actually structuring the legal component of that concept, that when we walk into a market, then there is no question if it's kind of if it's compliant or not. As I mentioned earlier, our kind of risk boundary is it must be risk compliant. So it must be compliant. And the answer to the question how we reward customers, well, it depends. Like, if we go in home visits or we ask them, we just pay them as when you do it in the research as well, just small kind of gratitude for their time. But for when we go to live to market, this is we don't reward them, because it is actually they're experiencing like they are involved in the service or purchasing the product or service.
And that's great. It's so interesting to see how businesses are really trying to grapple with innovation and making things work for their users and using design thinking and design processes to get there. So hats off to your company for employing this method and for seeing results. Given your experience with this company, Munib, and given your experience, John, with working with many different companies around the globe, what do you think is next? What do you think are the next big challenges that companies and designers with their skills will be needing to solve?
Well, this is a really big question.
We'll make it our last question.
I'm happy. Go ahead.
Go for it, John.
I think there's a couple of interesting challenges that big companies have. So again, multi-thousand and up employees, multiple locations, a well-recognized brand, incoming cash. These are attributes that a startup doesn't have. A startup doesn't have a known brand. It has a handful of people that can work nimbly. And so I think a large established company has to look at different ways to get ideas out. And so I think the creativity of coming up with ideas is more and more happening on the implementation side. So to your questions around how you pilot, how you get ideas out and test them with customers, I think we're only going to see more and more creative models, whether it's spinning out new small organizations and then reabsorbing them once they scale,
Right.
Identifying how you get hundreds or thousands of employees to think in a customer-centered way, to solve things like legal and compliance, to Munib's point. I think that's the next big challenge for companies. You can't just do it as a one-off. You have to be able to build your capability to do it repeatedly.
Yes, I agree.
And quickly from AMP, I think the challenge for us is really to have the rest of the organization on the journey, because it is not something that we quickly fix. I think it requires time, and well, we believe that this is an important journey, and we are committed to it. And I think the main thing is that we really want to actually establish more. A much better connection and emotional connection with our customers, that they actually say, "But I really love this organization because they understand what I really need in my life."
Thank you. That's great. Well, speaking of time, I hate to say it, but we're out of time nearly. We could probably do a training session all day on this topic. So we really appreciate your great contribution to our webinar today. And we'd like to congratulate you on your DMI Design Value Award. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Talking to you and your.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to close with some announcements. Please check out dmi.org for information on the 3 conferences DMI is planned for this year: the Design Management Conference Europe, which will be May 23rd and 25th in Amsterdam; the Academic Design Management Conference, which will occur July 28th and 29th in Boston; and DMI's Annual Design Leadership Conference, which will take place September 25th through the 27th, also in Boston. Nominations for the 2016 DMI Design Value Awards are now open. These awards recognize organizations for design and design management initiatives that drive revenue, organizational and cultural change, social impact, or customer value. Go to dmi.org/DVA for more information on that. And please consider expanding your impact in design by becoming a member of DMI and supporting 4040, our 40th anniversary capital campaign. Finally, I'd like to thank our listeners for joining us with smart questions. Those are always much appreciated. And special thanks to Ann Lyon and Chris Hancock at DMI, who helped make these webcasts possible by keeping us connected figuratively with great content, and literally to the GoToWebinar interface. So thank you so much, and bye-bye.